Start recording. I just want to welcome everyone. I am Cantor Liz Berkey. I'm one of the clergy team at Untitled, and just by way of a little introduction, I participated in a workshop that Tracie led. Actually, I came late to it myself, but so if people are a little late, that's okay. But I was so impressed by her that I felt just a connection to the work that she's doing, that I just thought I need to bring this to our community. So I'm very happy that you're all here thinking of this idea of self-care, because it is such a trying time for all of us. And I really think Tracie will bring us on a little journey in our time together this evening to help us think about how to care for ourselves, have better compassion for ourselves as we keep going through these trying days. So Tracie?
Thank you so much. Liz, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be with you this evening, the last night of Hanukkah. I hope it has brought light and sweetness, cutting through some of the dark of this time, and that it's a light and a warmth you'll be able to carry with you, not just tonight, but as you move beyond the holidays. As I mentioned to those who were here a few minutes ago, please take a moment, feel free to grab a snack, a drink, something to relax with, light a candle, whatever works for you, water, tea, wine, and a writing implement and something to write on. If you're a technology person and you've got your iPad next to you, that works as well. A little bit more about myself professionally. I have been a Jewish professional for about 30 years, always working in one form or another to bring meaningful spiritual connection to people where they are. So accessing Judaism in a way that's personally meaningful. And one of the changes the pandemic brought me was I shifted gears professionally and moved from what I would call the more corporate Jewish world to my roots and what I'd been doing extracurricularly for the last 12, 15 of these 30 years. And that is providing adult workshops with sophisticated conversation about ourselves and our tradition and how we connect. So Nourishing the Soul Workshops was born, and I was privileged to run a workshop for about 40 clergy the week after the holiday season. The idea was it was sponsored by the many, many different Jewish movements and demographics within the United States and beyond, I think United States and Canada primarily. And they brought together their clergy to give them a break, because these times have been really, really difficult. And we've called upon those first spiritual responders, who are our clergy, to carry us. And so not only did they have the bulk of the pandemic and serving their communities in ways that most of us have never imagined or been trained to do, but then they went into the high holidays. So post high holidays, I had the great privilege of being part of this wonderful week of giving back. And I worked with clergy doing a Nourishing the Soul workshop. And that has led me to you this evening, and I couldn't be happier to be here. I work using primarily the pedagogy of one of my mentors, a man named Rabbi Aryeh Ben David, who created the brilliant Ayeka program in Israel and then expanded it through the United States and much of the world. And the premise behind what he created is that Judaism has so much that is accessible and deep and powerful to offer, but we can get lost, and often our teachers get lost in the Aramaic. And the Rabbi Aryeh Ben David is his name, and the program is Ayeka, A-Y-E-K-A, Ayeka. And the idea behind the pedagogy of what he created and what I've, in the last 12, 15 years, added to the work that I do, is taking rich text of our tradition and commentary from both modern and lasting commentary, and translating it into English to remove the barriers that don't need to be a point of pride for people, but rather simply were separators from learning from each other in a deep way. I'll just echo welcome everyone who has just arrived, and I'm delighted that you are with us. I'm just doing a brief introduction of myself. And so part of the process of this workshop is a prompt where everyone introduces themselves. I just want to make sure, Liz, that you've got, you're admitting people. Thank you so much. Okay. So please share your name and a favorite container. In other words, what's your favorite holder for things? I want to move through it quickly because we're a good crowd. Anyone can volunteer. Just unmute and share your name and your favorite container.
I'm Aaron, backpack.
Thank you.
I'm Max, and really anything that holds something else is my favorite container.
Thank you, Max.
I'm Taylor, and I'm really stumped. I don't know what to say, but the first thing coming to mind is a bowl, just a nice little bowl.
All right, thank you.
I'm Laura Smith. I'm a little stumped about a favorite container, but kind of stream of consciousness, the first thing that came to mind was the chest cavity that holds the heart and lungs.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Thank you. Lovely.
My name's Abby. I love all containers, like I love organizing.
Mhm.
I'd have to say the first thing that came to mind, because I used it today, was the container that holds my flour and sugar, just because they're like matching and they like perfectly fit the sugar and the scooper and stuff. So
I love that when it just works perfectly for you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Jeanette, and at one point I collected salt and pepper shakers.
Lovely. Thank you, Jeanette.
My name's Frederica or Freddie, and I think my favorite containers are Ziploc bags. I think they're very useful.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cynthia, was your hand up?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would think of a vase for
Lovely.
flowers or decorative things.
Very nice. Thank you. Barbara?
My name is Barbara Brown, and I have a fluted bowl that's really pretty with lots. It's a ceramic bowl with a lot of different colors, and I throw my keys in them so I can find my keys.
Smart. Excellent.
My name is Sheila, and I love baskets, all kinds of baskets.
Very nice. Thank you, Sheila.
My name is Katie, and I have a mug where the handle is a whale tail.
Lovely.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and sorry, I have my camera off because I'm on my phone tonight. And my favorite container is the small ceramic dish. When I travel, I like to collect small ceramic dishes to hold like jewelry.
Very nice. Lovely. Anyone else want to go?
My name is Laurel Cramdis, and what comes to my mind is my coffee cup.
Wonderful.
I'm Nikolai. I'm in the Jews by Choice program, and I'm here to learn. And Laurel stole my favorite container. The coffee mug is mine as well.
It's a popular one. I don't blame you, and I'm delighted you're here, Nikolai.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to go? Okay, I've obviously had time to think about this. I am Tracie Bernstein, and my favorite containers are the beautiful wooden covered boxes that my mom collected throughout her life that just adorned many, many surfaces in the home in which I grew up. Any last takers? Okay, so what I'd like to do is talk about what these things have in common. So in the chat, or you can unmute, I'm just going to pull up a whiteboard. For those of you unfamiliar with a whiteboard, can you see it? There it is. I'm just going to quickly jot down some of the things that you say. What do containers do for us among the things that were named?
Hold things.
Hold things, great. If you can unmute, that's probably easier for me. What else do they do?
They make life pretty.
I love it. They make life pretty. What else do they do?
Protect things.
Oh, beautiful. They protect.
And they organize things. They separate one thing from another.
They display
Organize.
things.
Oh, good. Okay, separate and display. Those are great.
Contain.
Nice. Oops.
About
What else?
decorate.
I'm sorry?
Decorate.
Lovely, decorate.
Sometimes they nourish. They nourish us.
Oh, lovely. They nourish. Lovely.
They
One of
add-
my favorite words.
Sentimental value, like
Wonderful.
emotional connection. Yeah.
Wonderful.
They are
And they-
never negative.
They're never negative. Say more. What do you mean by that?
That we do not contain negative thoughts, negative experiences, negative words. We contain good things, beautiful things in our life, things that we enjoy.
Gotcha. So in the ideal, they should, a container should not be negative, right? Love it. Any other thoughts?
Yes.
Please.
I was actually thinking of your brain, which can have many thoughts, both positive and negative.
Ah, so it can be complex. Oops, that has an M. It can be complex.
Containers can also conceal instead of display.
Nice.
Well, the negative comment made me think about they are negative space. They're kind of defined negative space that we put into whatever.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Lovely.
the word separate for me makes it negative.
Well, not in a valuation sense, just in a.
No, sorry, that's just my own thought.
That's fair. And I think that containers hold all manner of complexity. And that which separates things out can be a joy and a relief, and it can be a frustration and an isolation, right? I can see all of that. I want to pause this idea for a moment, stop the share to continue the conversation. Thank you. I think that we came up with a good, robust initial sets of ideas about a container. Does anyone here know the Hebrew word for a vessel, a container?
Sorry. A kli.
Kli. The Hebrew word for a vessel is a kli. That's right. And a vessel that is designed, if anyone could mute, I think it's Andra. Thank you. If the word in Hebrew for a holy vessel is a kli kodesh, multiple or clay kodesh. What's an example of a kli kodesh? A holy vessel, meaning that which holds something that is holy. And by virtue of the fact that it is holding something holy, the vessel itself is holy as well.
A Kiddush cup?
Love it. Kiddush cup. Laura, were you about to say something?
Well, the Torah.
The Torah, the Ark, exactly. So the Aron Kodesh is a Kli Kodesh, it's holding Torah. I love Kiddush cup, right? It's holding the sanctifying wine. What else?
Yeah, Havdalah spice box.
Love it. A Havdalah spice box. All of a sudden, you know, cinnamon and spices are elevated to something that is transformative. It takes you through a liminal moment from Shabbat into the Chol, into the regular week.
Tzedakah box.
A tzedakah box, gorgeous. Nice.
Menorah.
I didn't hear?
Menorah.
A menorah, say more.
No, it holds the candles for Hanukkah.
Lovely. And it not only holds the candles for Hanukkah, but you could light birthday candles and they are not holy, right? It is for a holy purpose, and that is why it's a Kli Kodesh. Excellent. I just thought, what do we adorn ourselves with at prayer services? What do we wear? Talit. Yes. And so what is the bag that holds it? A talit bag is a Kli Kodesh, right? A tefillin bag is a Kli Kodesh. A mikvah is a Kli Kodesh.
Mezuzah?
A mezuzah, beautiful, beautiful, right? The vessel that holds the holy thing is rendered holy itself.
A
Beautiful.
kippah.
A kippah. So say more, Aaron.
I just think of it in terms of like your head.
Lovely. So you are actually my plant. Aaron, thank you. Andrea, were you about to say something?
No.
Okay. So Aaron, thank you. What you just said is exactly what I hoped we would move toward, which is, what about us? What about people? Our tradition tells us that we are also Kli Kodesh. We are also holy vessels. What does it mean that the human body is a holy vessel like a Torah ark? Why? Why are we a holy vessel? Why are we a Kli Kodesh, each of us?
Because we're made in God's image.
Lovely. We're made in God's image, right? We're each B'Tselem Elohim, created in God's image, right?
Fragile.
Fragile. Well, is everything that is fragile holy?
Oh, no, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I think the fragility of something that is holy to us is powerful because that's about the elevated import. But not every, water glass that I have is holy, right? So other than to express our personal style or to do mitzvot, right, in the world, to bring God's action in the world through mitzvot, what is the human body supposed to be a vessel for?
Souls, her neshama.
Our neshama, our soul. Beautiful, right? We are a vessel. We're not, the thing that we think of as our body is not the full entity that makes us holy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a kli. We wouldn't be holding something. We wouldn't be that which is carrying something. What is the thing that we are carrying? Our neshama, our soul.
Love.
Love is beautiful, right? And through this lens, our tradition would say, the way that you bring love into the world, the way you love others is uniquely you. And that is part of your neshama. That's not part of your physical body is not how you love. It's not the way you express yourself and your thoughts and your words and your understanding, right? That comes from within. I want to share some text with you. What I'd like for us to do is read through the texts twice. The first time, and we'll read them aloud. The first time, just absorb it. The second time through, I'm going to ask you to please look for words or phrases that resonate with you, either because they're interesting or pleasing or strike you, or because you absolutely disagree and this does not work for you at all. Whichever way, but we'll unpack them together afterward. I can't see everyone, but if someone would volunteer to read the first.
I can.
Thank you. Is that Aaron?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Judaism teaches that the body and soul are separate yet indivisible partners in human life. Rather than imprisoning or corrupting the soul, the body is a God-given tool for doing sacred work in the world. It requires protection, care, and respect because it is holy. In the creation story, we read of God blowing a, quote, breath of life into the man of earth and dust, Genesis 2:7. The word used is a form of the Hebrew root indicating breath, neshama, which became associated with the soul. The word nephesh is often used to mean person or living being. In Ecclesiastes, the death of a person is described as occurring when the dust returns to the ground where it had been, and the soul returns to the God who had given it.
Thank you. And who will read that again?
I can read it.
Thank you.
The same one?
Yes, please.
Okay. Judaism teaches that the body and soul are separate yet indivisible partners in human life. Rather than imprisoning or corrupting the soul, the body is a God-given tool for doing sacred work in the world. It requires protection, care, and respect because it is holy. In the creation story, we read of God blowing a breath of life into the man of earth and dust in Genesis 2:7. The word used is a form of the Hebrew root indicating breath, neshama, which became associated with the soul. The word nephesh is often used to mean person or living being. And in Ecclesiastes, the death of a person is described as occurring when the dust returns to the ground where it had been, and the soul returns to the God who had given it.
Lovely, thank you. Who will read the second verse text the first time?
I can, if you can.
Thank you.
A little bit. Or...
Oh, of course. Hold on one second. Oh, 2 is the pink one. I don't know why it got misnumbered.
Oh, I see. They both say 3. I understand.
They do.
Okay.
Let's go with pink.
Okay. A midrash from Vayikra Rabbah teaches, Rabbi Abba Bar Yudan taught, all that God prohibited in an animal sacrifice, God accepts in a human being. What is prohibited in an offering? When a person offers from the herd or the flock a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, it must, to be acceptable, be without blemish. There must be no defect in it. Anything blind or broken or maimed or with a wart, such that you shall not offer to the Lord. All these things which render a sacrifice unfit, God fully accepts. God sees as fitting in a human being. The Midrash goes on to explain that as human beings, we are ashamed and embarrassed to use a vessel that is broken, but not so with God. All God's vessels are broken, all of us.
And will someone else read that again?
Can read it.
I don't know you well enough to call on you. Thank you.
A midrash from Vayikra Rabbah teaches, Rabbi Abba Bar Yudan taught, all that God prohibited in an animal sacrifice, God accepts in a human being. What is prohibited in an offering? When a person offers from the herd or the flock a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, it must, to be acceptable, be without blemish. There must be no defect in it. Anything blind or broken or maimed or with a wart, such you shall not offer to the Lord. All these things which render a sacrifice unfit, God fully accepts. God sees as fitting in a human being. The Midrash goes on to explain that as human beings, we are ashamed and embarrassed to use a vessel that is broken, but not so with God. All God's vessels are broken, all of us.
Thank you very much. And the other number 3, would someone volunteer to read?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Debbie Friedman created 2 fascinating modern musical settings for Jewish prayer, the Angel's Blessing and Mishaberach. Each asks God for purpose and blessing to our bodies. The opening 3 lines of the Angel's Blessing speak poetically to our purpose in living. May our right hand bring us closer to our godliness. May our left hand give us strength to face each day. And before us, may our vision light our paths ahead. These words explain our obligation to care for ourselves. Our bodies are God's vessels for mitzvot. Our hands are the hands of God. Our eyes are God's eyes in the world. Our eyes enact God's first words, let there be light. Debbie's Mishaberach acknowledges another reality of our bodies. We can become ill, we are hungry, we hurt, or we are emotionally at sea. The first verse of the Misheberach calls upon us to avoid despair, to have the courage to push through suffering, to continue to do mitzvot. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. The second verse asks God to heal us. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. Together, these prayers can guide us toward the purpose of our physical selves and direct us toward healing when we are sick, hurt, or lost.
Lovely. And who will reread?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Are you talking to Andra?
Sure. Whoever said it. Andra, thank you. Yes. Andra.
Debbie Friedman created two fascinating modern musical settings for Jewish prayer, the Angel's Blessing and the Mishpocha. Each asks God for purpose and blessing for our bodies. The opening 3 lines of the Angel's Blessing speaks poetically to our purpose in living. May our right hand bring us closer to our godliness. May our left hand give us strength to face each day. And before us, may our vision light our paths ahead. These words explain our obligation to care for ourselves. Our bodies are God's vessels for mitzvot. Our hands are hands of God. Our eyes are God's hands in the world. Our eyes reenact God's first words, let there be light. Debbie's mishpocha acknowledges another reality of our bodies. We can become ill. We are hungry. We are hurt or are emotionally at sea. I don't know why I'm having trouble. The first verse of the Misheberach, calls upon us to avoid despair, to have the courage to push through our suffering, to continue to do our mitzvot. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. The second verse asks God to heal us. Bless those in need of healing with refuah. I'm not sure.
Refuah shlema.
I'm not sure of that. Refuah shlemeya.
Shlema, yes.
The renewal of the body, the renewal of spirit. Together, these prayers can guide us toward the purpose of our physical selves and direct us towards healing when we are sick, hurt, or lost.
Thank you very much, all of you. Any thoughts now going to the entire group of people in attendance? What struck you? What resonated with you on texts 1, 2, or 3?
Something that struck me was, sorry, was someone else?
No, go on.
In the third, the blue one?
Yes.
When it starts with, may our right hand bring us.
Yes.
I found it a little ironic, but there's all that being said, and I'm thinking in my head, what about people that don't have hands or cannot see? And
Right.
later on, it's mentioned the ill people, the sick people.
Yes.
So it's a little confusing to me.
I understand very much what you're saying, and you're actually getting to what I think is a core point of this conversation, right? If the holy thing in us is our soul and our body is the vessel that carries our soul, how do we understand that in the way we move through the world when our bodies aren't working, right? As you said, sometimes we don't have a working hand. I think she was speaking metaphorically, right? The idea that one aspect of ourselves is looking to the heavens and the other looking outward to do the work of the heavens in this world on the ground. I think that is speaking metaphorically, but you make a really good point.
Any other thoughts?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Connecting to Aaron's point, the pink quote from Rabbi Sharon Cohen Ainsfield, the way she ends, all God's vessels are broken, all of us, that we all are in some way chipped or injured or not working right or creaky, every single one of us, which is, I think, supports Debbie Friedman's point and also is very comforting that I'm not the only one whose back is sore right now.
Yes, so for me, it's my favorite line on the page. All God's vessels are broken, all of us, right? What does that say? We are God's vessel, we are holy, and we are all broken. It's that Leonard Cohen line, right? All things have a crack, that's how the light gets in, right? Our brokenness is part of our holiness. Taylor?
Yeah, that second one was speaking to me too, just, you know, in terms of the sacrifice, and that what isn't acceptable for a sacrifice is very much acceptable. So like, yeah, if you didn't have hands, you're fine. Like God sees you the same as if you did. So that's sort of comforting, although it's a little confusing why our sacrifices have to be perfect in that way, because I think it can lead you to feel like you also have to be perfect physically.
It's really interesting. Because, go on, Catherine.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'm done.
Catherine?
Oh, I was just gonna add on. I'm also really struggling with that second point of understanding, like, kind of this perfection that we kind of meet everything with in terms of the offerings. And when I think of all of the other clays, like I wouldn't want a Kiddush cup with a big crack in it. And so when I feel like, well, I have a big crack in me and I'm supposed to say like, all God's vessels are broken, all of us, but I feel like I don't expect that with the artifacts that I associate. But
so
I
your name
expect
says,
it in like God's people, but not in me.
So do people, your thing says Catherine, but I think you said a different name when you told your name.
Katie.
Katie, okay, great. So Katie and also Taylor. Wait, is your name Taylor or is it just the name on the screen? I know there were a few that were different names.
It's Taylor.
Okay, great. I'm fascinated by the turn in the conversation toward this piece, because the sacrifices that were given in the Holy Temple have not been part of the Jewish people's practice in thousands of years. And when Rabbinic Judaism was created and became the norm, which is the Judaism we know as Judaism today, sacrifices were replaced by the table, by dining together. And the ritual around it was, excuse me?
I just wanted you, if you could go back 1 second in regards to what Judaism is today.
Yes. So what I was saying is, this midrash from Vayikra Rabbah that Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld brings is to make the point that it used to be long ago that sacrifices were given to God as a show of our devotion to God. And the only way that the sacrifice could be given, the only way that was considered a proper sacrifice, was without blemish, with all kinds of fanfare and the most minute attention to detail. And if anything went astray, it was no longer considered a proper sacrifice. That ritual doesn't exist. And I'm going to go out on what I think is a not so far limb to say that Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld did not bring it because of the idea of sacrifices, but rather the juxtaposition of the Midrash, which is to say that even a long time ago, but already when, right, in the year 70, when the Second Temple was destroyed, never to be rebuilt, there a diaspora of Jews came into being in a way that was sustainable because prayer was codified and canonized. And our ritual, praying 3 times a day, the holidays evolving in a way that was replicable. We could pray wherever were around the world. We could pray in with the same language and rhythms and follow Luach, a Jewish calendar. And then rabbinic Judaism was born and thrived and allowed for a diaspora that allowed for the sustaining of the Jewish people. What this midrash was brought to say, even the perfect offering, going back to Leonard Cohen's beautiful words, right? Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. It's this midrash that Leonard Cohen is bringing. He's saying, and the rabbis of our canonized texts are saying, sure, we wanted to bring things to God, but we are not the things of God. We are the holy people in partnership. Human beings are in partnership with God, and that which is holy about us isn't our bodies. That which is holy about us is our souls. And it's really important. I don't remember if it was Katie who said this, but it's really important. We do often expect perfection of ourselves, even if not those around us. And particularly during a pandemic, it's so important to be able to see that God, says our tradition, God does not expect us to be ashamed or embarrassed when we are broken, because not if, but when we are broken, right? Because in some way or another, we all break inside and out. And these times are a time of great splintering and breaking. But all of us are broken. And if we begin there, we know we're still holy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Okay.
that's why I was drawn to that text.
Yes.
I was looking at the juxtaposition.
Good.
But we not to sound like I'm challenging you too much, but even though we don't do the sacrifices, we get verbal reminders when we read the text.
100%, you're right.
Psychologically, there's still this idea of like, okay, at one time they had to select all these, and I don't know how they did that, but
sure. No, but I get what you're saying, and I think the rabbis agree with you, which is why they came to elevate the juxtaposition. Lest you think that you need to be perfect, newsflash, you can't. Newsflash, God created us holy. We are holy, and we're all broken, every one of us. So lest you think that you must be something that is not human, because human beings are all broken, I'm here to juxtapose these two ideas to share with you. Indeed, you are human, therefore you are holy, and therefore you are necessarily broken, at times more than others. I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Aaron. When you raised number 3, I wanted to share an idea about Hanukkah. One of the clay kodesh that we did not discuss is the shamash, right? The oil wick, the flame, whose job it is to do what?
Light the other candles.
Light the other candles, right? The flask of oil is a holy vessel whose job it is to light the other candles and to be set aside because it represents light or heat or the ability to light things, right? It is the helper candle, people like to say. The job of a shamash is to be the helper, because the mitzvah of the other candles isn't supposed to be for light. It isn't supposed to be for heat. It is supposed to be to publicize the miracle. The sole job of a Chanukiah is to publicize the miracle. The job of the shamash is to light the flame that cannot light itself. You cannot publicize the miracle if you don't have the vessel lighting it, a separate vessel lighting it. There's another beautiful verse that I didn't bring here tonight that says a holy light cannot, what is the opposite of extinguish? To light something. Basically it's cannot relight itself, right? An extinguished light cannot relight itself. It must be lit. And there is a holy task of a shamash. The holy task of the shamash is to provide the fuel to be there so that another holy flame can be lit. And I think that metaphor is not at all lost on most of us who understand much more purely in this time the simplicity, even if it's not easy, the simple, even if difficult tasks that are before us, to be a shamash in the world, a vessel that helps elevate the light in others, that helps people not feel so alone, right? In this time of the pandemic, being a shamash can be as simple as texting someone, I'm thinking of you. Do you need anything from the grocery? Right? Being a shamash can be as simple as making sure you Zoom and look into the eyes of a loved one. It can also be complex, but it's powerfully important and has been pared down in the last 9 months in a way that certainly was not true in the rest of my lifetime. And I would hazard not for most of us. Did we as purely understand the vital importance of being a holy vessel that is holy because it helps keep the light of another soul.
I feel like cut me off if this is going off on a different tangent.
Okay.
The complex as opposed to simple.
Yes.
I was thinking of the complex is politically. For someone that's not in our political, you know, to be able to listen and be okay with it. And,
you're saying that to be a shamash, to be a vessel that allows for communication even when it's difficult,
right.
Even in times when things are so bifurcated. I think it's true. I think it's true. I think it's been pared down to such a degree that we're able to see past the rancor, even though for many people it's quite painful right now when you see someone whose views are so disparate from your own, and it can feel hurtful. But at the end of the day, they're still our neighbor or our child or our sibling or our parent. And, you know, we still have memories together and memories we hope to make together. And how do we navigate that?
Right.
Right. That's really powerful. Thank you. Anyone struck by number 1 or why it's there?
Could I go back to number 2 for a second?
Of course.
Okay, so that was the paragraph that really caught my attention. And I'm just wondering if you could comment or extrapolate. For me, it's easy to see how we could be a shamash to help others, tikkun olam, and letting in the light and helping others and so on. But at the end, it says we're all God's vessels and we're all broken. So how do you extrapolate from that beyond helping others and helping yourself?
Lovely. So that really, to me, I'll say it in 2 different. I'll say it in 2 different ways. That is the forever challenge, right? The shamash is about making sure you're there for others, and the Hanukkah flames are very much about elevating the holiness that is our unique soul, where no one else in the world is exactly like us. And we have something powerfully important to contribute, right? So elevating ourselves or elevating others. But when we say we're all broken, I don't think it means that we're broken down. I think we are each with a blemish, is what that is saying. In other words, we're imperfect. Yeah. And there's a difference between, Marcia, I see you, and I would love to hear what you have to say. I think the difference is between being in a place where you can be for others and a place where you need others to be for you, or, as is most often the case, where we're in between and we need both. Some of us need to be reminded of being cared for a little bit more. Others have to be reminded of caring for others a little bit more. All of us likely need to be reminded that we have something holy and powerful to offer, even if it's not easy, and that we should know that about ourselves and bring that to the fore in whatever way we're going to bring that. It's not about brokenness that is complete, that I am broken down, though it looks different in this pandemic world than it does in the normal world. I think of myself, and I'm generally seen as a person with boundless energy. Not so, not so these days. I still have plenty, I guess, on the normal curve, but on a Tracie curve, I'll tell you that I need downtime. And I name it as these are not normal times. And if we begin to think that they're normal times, we do ourselves a disservice because we're all foundationally unmoored. We are all suffering, even if we're doing well, by the lack of normalcy and the lack of health and stability around us. And we can count our blessings while also, as a wonderful article that I read at the beginning of the pandemic shared. And Marcia, I apologize for asking you to pause. I read a beautiful article that was strangely written in the Harvard Business Chronicle. They were having a board meeting, and I want to say maybe it was beginning of April. So the whole Zoom thing was still relatively new. So the board, presumably of very successful people, they all get on and they're schmoozing and catching up. And everyone says, you know, I'm doing great. Thank God I'm very lucky. I have everything I need. I know I'm very lucky. But, you know, this is pretty dissonant. But, you know, but we're lucky. One of the women on the board is a psychologist, and she wrote an article about this. And she said, I asked everyone to pause for a second. And I said, that dissonance we're all experiencing, that you're all feeling, that's grieving. Even when you know you're lucky, allow yourself the opportunity to grieve the upside down world we've found ourselves in, that we don't understand, the lack of certainty, the lack of understanding of what will be for those we love and those who have less stability than we. The lack of that which we knew to be fact on the ground until 6 minutes ago, which now suddenly is not at all a fact on the ground of our lives. That's unmooring, and you're allowed to mourn. You're allowed to grieve without overstating the issue, because each of us has experienced a loss in this, even if we're the lucky ones. And I think that moving in the middle of that space is that second piece. Marcia.
I was going to remark on the term that we are broken. I didn't like that term, and I was going to reflect and say that we're just imperfect. And part of the way to strive for perfection is by doing mitzvot, because our soul or our neshama, you know, there is the tale that what is this called? Or is it here? That when you are in your mother's stomach, you know everything that there is to know.
Yes.
But before you are born, God, I forget the exact tale. He takes this knowledge from you.
Yes.
And you are only left with a very, very little smidgen. And so in order to perfect your neshama, you strive to do mitzvot. And by doing the mitzvot, you do not focus on yourself and your needs, but in the same way you are satisfying yourself and your needs because you are considerate of others.
You know what? You brought a lot with that, Marcia, and I so appreciate it. A couple of responses to what you said. First, thank you. Maybe the word broken doesn't work for a lot of you. Maybe it's too strong. I think it was juxtaposing, you know, whole and perfect with that which is not, right? But yeah, maybe broken is too strong a word there. I appreciate that. The second thing is, and I'm bringing this back to my framing, the way each of us does mitzvot is unique to us, even if the mitzvah is theoretically the same, right? I make chicken soup and bring it to someone who's sick. That's a mitzvah. My chicken soup is not Marcia's chicken soup, right? It's something as small and silly as that to the way I verbally comfort someone or make someone laugh or think of someone, the way I express myself in the world. Everything about me is singularly me. in its parts, right? In the sum of its parts. And I think that it isn't simply doing mitzvot that satisfies everything, because otherwise my holy soul wouldn't be important. It would only be what my holy soul does in the world. But my holy soul is important. And self-care is a part of Judaism. We're supposed to care for our bodies. We're supposed to care for our souls. So it's all of that is in there. Bringing ourselves to the mitzvot is a key part of it. Any thoughts on number one, text number one?
I did, but I wanted to say something about brokenness. Sorry.
Yes, please.
Well, yeah, maybe this is too big for this thing, but in Kabbalistic Judaism, isn't there like sort of the idea that the world sort of broke apart at the beginning?
Yes.
Sort of analogous to the Big Bang, but like that there were these vessels, or like it was a vessel, and then, you know, so the world like is broken from the beginning. So in that way, you know, us being broken isn't unlike the world. We're just kind of a mirror of it. And Tikkun Olam is like healing and repairing the world, but it's never going to be complete. We just keep doing it, and we continually heal and repair ourselves. And it doesn't ever have to be complete. I think maybe the mistake is to think that there needs to be a completion, that there is a point at which we are perfect. That's a vanishing goal. But like our bodies are continually healing on their own anyway. That's just what they do, until the point at which we don't no longer breathe.
Taylor, I really appreciate that.
Feature, not a flaw, is what I'm trying to say.
I so appreciate that, because really we're getting stuck in the word broken. We're getting stuck in the word perfect. And the lesson for this class is really in the space between, that we can't be perfect, and brokenness is, I don't know, incremental. So perhaps those words were too extreme and keep us from seeing the point, right? Which frankly, for me, it just, as I said, it touched me in a way that I loved. All of God's vessels are imperfect. All of us is perhaps how it should have read. Number one, any thoughts on number one?
So I really like, I think it was Taylor, what you just said about like brokenness, but I like the word broken personally, just because it is so visceral. But going to what you were saying, Tracie, about number one, it kind of makes me think about what you were saying of everyone's mitzvot looking different. And that's kind of like everyone's soul looks different. And like, so like all of our bodies are different, but in some ways, all of our bodies are the same in our brokenness, in our imperfections, and our souls are also imperfect. And like, we can't strive, like we can't hope for a perfect soul, but we can like work to a good soul. But like, there's no point in working to a perfect body. And so like, we have this body as a tool, and we have this soul that is like sacred. And so like looking at it as a tool seems almost like sacrilegious, but like we can use it, you know. So I don't know what I'm saying. I started with the point and I lost it.
No, that's okay. I really appreciate where you're going with this. Yeah, it gets complicated, and the power of thinking of our body and soul as partners in an endeavor, where the body is the vessel, and part of its holy job is to protect and be safe so that the soul can continue in this world. And that our soul plays different roles in different ways in different parts of our lives, right? It's complicated. I do want to say about number one, before I stop sharing this text and move toward the close, because we're just about at that time, is it just clearly delineates, this first text clearly delineates the Torahitic origins of both the physical body and the soul, and the shared, right, separate yet indivisible partners in human life. It shows you that in our earliest canonized text, in our origin story, we understood the body and the soul, and that they're in relationship.
Well, yeah, and if I can just say that it takes on a whole different dimension in the pandemic, where how we keep ourselves safe and other people safe is just, we have to think about it in different ways, and
thank you
a lot more.
Yes, thank you. And so I'll just quickly round this out by saying, oh, Aaron asked, could we get a copy of the text? And the answers are yes, yes, yes. When we conclude, I'm going to actually ask if you're comfortable, if anyone is not comfortable with me directly emailing you and therefore having you on my Nourishing the Soul mailing list, please private message me in the chat and I will make sure that I do not email you. But with approval, I'm going to email you my thank you note that includes the texts, that includes the writing prompts that we're about to do. So you can hopefully marinate on it a bit and journal about it if you're so inclined. And a 5-question evaluation for me so I can learn from this experience about what worked for you and what didn't, and continue with strength. So again, if you're not comfortable receiving an email from me, please private message me and I'll make sure that I do not put you on that list. Okay. So to conclude this part, we understand now why we're commanded in Judaism to care for our bodies. Not so that they shouldn't break because they're holy, but because though the human body is stronger and weaker in different times, ultimately we break down in different ways. If we're blessed to grow older, we break down. But rather, we're commanded to care for our bodies because they're the vessel for our unique souls. And there is no soul, I'll go, Mr. Rogers on us right now, right? There's nobody exactly like you. There's no one who experiences the world or expresses the world or has exactly what you have to say in the world. Nobody. And your soul is holy, says our tradition. And what you have to bring is of value, says our tradition. And some rabbis, including Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Palestine, the modern state of Israel, said, even if it is difficult, it is your obligation to elevate your soul and bring it to the world. That is your commandment for your soul. And in these times of pandemic, when we aren't always up to it, it is our job also to be a shamash, to light another soul and keep them aflame until they can ignite themselves. And with that, I want to share with you text. That is the writing prompt. My hope is that I'm going to share it in the chat and share it on the screen. And my hope is that you'll take these questions now and then continue journaling on them. As I said, I will email you. I'll email them to you as well by tomorrow morning, but here you go. Do you have it? Now I'm going to share it on the screen and then I'm going to read aloud the questions. The purpose of this, oops, hold on. Do you see it? No.
I see it in the chat, but not.
Give me just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Give me just a moment. Not sure what's going on here. Aha, now I found you. I had lost you for a moment. Here it is on the screen. Getting back to our body as a Kli Kodesh, how might thinking about your body as a holy vessel change the way you approach your physical self-care? What are 2 ways in which you either care well for your Kli Kodesh or you might better care for yourself? Oh, pulled the wrong one. Forgive me, I'm going to have to get you one that does not talk about mikvah guides, but how do you see yourself? And I'll correct this in the verse. I'm so sorry I shared the wrong one. How do you see yourself and your role as a Kli Kodesh, a container that holds a holy moment for others? How can you hold a holy moment for others without trying to shape them, but rather just ignite them? I believe that Nikolai had a question that I had missed, and I don't know when that was posted to me. I apologize, Nikolai. That might have been half an hour ago. I didn't see it in the chat.
I just wanted to share how I understand paragraph 1.
Yes,
Is that
please.
we are broken when we think that we are broken, or when we think that other people think that we are broken. God never thinks that we are broken. That is why the statement of the second paragraph I interpret as everybody is broken, because God thinks that way, but he knows. And another thought that I have is that we have to take care of our bodies because God needs them. God works through us. And if we're not healthy, and if we're not in good, not broken state, we cannot do God's work.
Nikolai, 2 beautiful points. I thank you so much for rounding out the commentary of the evening so powerfully. Thank you. What I hope will happen with this writing prompt is that you'll marinate on it and allow yourself the permission to contemplate deeply the questions. Of course, you could share anything you would want to share, but the purpose here is less that they spark conversation between us than that they spark conversation within yourself. And with that, it's 9:03. I've gone 3 minutes over. I do apologize, but I thank you so much for sharing yourselves and your time tonight. And I wish you a rest of Hanukkah. We've got a day to go tomorrow afternoon, and a season that continues with warmth and light, and that you see the Klei Kodesh all around you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracie.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
all.
Tracie, and thank you all for participating and for opening yourselves up as vessels yourselves. I really appreciate that, and for bringing more light into our community. Thank you, Tracie, very much.
Thank you for inviting me and for sharing with me tonight. It was wonderful. I hope we'll be able to do this again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night. Happy end of Hanukkah, everyone.
Happy Hanukkah.